Good morning and welcome to a frigid NYNJPA weather. I'm your meteorologist, Stephen DiMartino, and it's pretty cold outside. Temperatures this morning at about 8 a.m. were around the lower teens, and earlier on this morning in the lower single digits. Basically all my bottled water is now frozen. Well, let's take a look at the latest forecast. I want to start out with this morning's surface map and kind of take a long view of the entire North America. And I want to point out that the center of this high pressure system is all the way up in northern Canada. That's pretty impressive for a reach of a high pressure system. Now, for the most part, most of the locations will remain dry today and very cold. Temperatures will struggle to break out of the 20s. So clearly we are dealing with an Arctic air mass here. We have a few disturbances that will approach the region on Sunday with a few scattered snow showers. But for the most part, we're looking at generally cold and quiet weather conditions all the way through this weekend. I mean, really, after the storms we've had over the past few days, a few scattered snow showers really isn't that much of a big deal. However, next week, well, that's going to be a little bit more tricky to figure out because it looks like we're dealing with a winter storm here that's going to be a little bit different than any of the other winter storms we've had this year. Let's take a look at the latest model guidance from the European model and from the Penn State EWOL website. So this is Monday night, and my main concern here is you see this kink in the pressure field going down through the southeast. That's called cold air damming. Now, the way that this high pressure system is positioned, it will not support a prolonged ice and snow event for the northern Atlantic. But again, you don't need much ice to produce a problem with driving on Tuesday morning. And when you have this type of setup with two low pressure systems approaching from the west, what you get at times is what's called on the TV sometimes is overrunning precipitation, or the scientific term is called isotropic precipitation, where basically you have warm air moving over some very cold air, which produces precipitation in the form of snow, sleet, or rain. Now, what I'm concerned about as this storm approaches is that the first low pressure system, which is over the southern plains on Monday, will drive up the east coast. Now, right now, the pattern is not set up to support a phase that's early enough to produce a winter storm that we've been seeing over the past few weeks. However, what it does set up is the potential for, along the coast, a start off of snow, sleet, perhaps some freezing rain, changing over straight to rain by mid to late Tuesday morning. And especially along the immediate coast, the changeover will be fast because you have more influence from the Atlantic. But if you're just away from the coast, let's say about 10 miles, that influence is going to be limited because of the snowpack in place. So it is a concern here that we could be dealing with a prolonged period of freezing rain before a change over straight to rain. And this type of setup is very, very fine in detail, and it's important to just keep aware of the potential, especially as you move into the interior north and west of the big cities, where you have over 20 inches of snow on the ground in Connecticut. And of course in northeastern Pennsylvania, even though the snowpack isn't as deep, there's still snow on the ground, and cold air does like to get trapped in those locations. So while the models clearly show a warm solution with rain, at the lower levels, below 950 millibars and where you and I live, the models sometimes overestimate the ability for the warm air to override this cold air and underestimates the ability for the cold air to stick around. And that could lead to a surprise ice event for some locations, especially north and west of the big cities. So you can see at 500 millibars on Tuesday evening, the disturbances don't phase. They don't phase in time, they don't interact in time, and so therefore this storm is not going to be able to redevelop off the east coast and just explode, at least not until it gets into New England. So we clearly have two separate streams here that we're dealing with. And as a result, because of the pattern, notice to the west we really don't have much of a ridge, and so everything is pretty much thrown off as far as the ability for a winter storm. But after all, we need a break anyway. So again, this is clearly looking like a mix over to rain for the coast. A little bit more dicey along over the interior. We could see a prolonged period of ice, especially in northeastern Pennsylvania, the Hudson Valley, and parts of interior Connecticut. But this is certainly looking like something that we're going to have to keep an eye on. And if we continue to see this type of pattern unfold as we move into the weekend, I will likely have to start sending out emails about ice threats for a lot of my members who have signed up for regional alerts, especially for Connecticut, for an ice threat on Tuesday morning. And we can see the surface here, and notice again that the low pressure system tracks over New Jersey, which is important to point out because that means that much of the Philadelphia, New York City metropolitan area will be on the warm side of this low pressure system. This is not an all frozen precipitation event in any way, shape, or form for New York City or Philadelphia or anywhere along the coast. But again, you don't need much ice to create a problem, especially on the rush hour of Tuesday morning. And also notice that the thickness line, this red dashed line that's back over northwestern Pennsylvania, that's the line where you have the difference between snow and ice and rain. And when you are to the east of this line, you don't expect snow, but again, because it's so cold over the interior, it may be forming in the form of sleet and freezing rain rather than just plain rain. We're going to have to keep an eye on that. And behind this storm, it gets very cold, and cold for quite some time. Let's take a look at the long-range guidance here from the European model. Now, this is the 850 millibar forecast for next Sunday, and I wanted to pull this out as at the end of the forecast just to kind of make a point here. There is a lot of cold air waiting up in Canada, and it is coming down, and it is moving towards the Great Lakes and eventually the northern mid-Atlantic. This type of cold air would support temperatures in the mid to upper 20s for highs. And that's exactly what we can be looking for after the storm leaves on Tuesday night, with very cold conditions for Wednesday on through the end of next week and likely into next weekend. This type of pattern typically does not support major winter storms because what we have in place is a neutral to slightly positive NAO pattern. However, don't get used to that for too long because while staying cold, it will likely become stormy once again as we move into next weekend or possibly early the following week. Thank you for visiting NYNJPA Weather. I'm your meteorologist, Stephen DiMartino. Have an excellent day and stay warm out there.